Hello, everyone, and welcome to SDG Live. We are here at the World Economic Forum's annual meeting in Davos, Switzerland, to bring you conversations about what is happening around the SDGs, international cooperation, and multilateralism. Very excited to be here today to talk about responsible business and the SDGs, and to explore a little bit the role that companies have to play in being good stewards of the Earth for people and the planet. And I'm pleased to be joined by John Danilovich, who is the Secretary General of the International Chamber of Commerce, which is the largest business representative organization in the world. And then Rob Schutter of the Group President and CEO of MTN, which is a South African mobile telecoms company. So thank you both for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. So I wonder, John, maybe if we can start with you. ICC obviously has a ton of members who are part of the organization, but you also have a unique role to play in the SDG conversation. You were just recently named as one of the first UN permanent observer status. So I wonder if you could maybe talk about your role as permanent observers to the UN. What does that mean for your work on the SDGs, and how are you engaging companies in your efforts?
Delighted to do that.
Perfect.
As you've mentioned, we are the world's largest business organization. We have 6 million members, corporate members, in 100 countries, 100 national committees spread throughout the globe. And last year, in January 2017, we were granted observer status at the United Nations. Of course, we're not a sovereign state.
Right.
We're in one level below that. So we have observer status at the General Assembly. We are the only business organization that has been granted that status. So we are, in fact, the de facto business portal at the United Nations for participation. What it specifically means is that we can participate in the negotiations of the various committees with regards to all matters that come before the United Nations General Assembly. Not only with regards to rules and regulations and standards, but also very much so with regards to the Sustainable Development Goals. And the International Chamber of Commerce has actually been involved in the SDG initiative since its inception as the voice of business, making it very clear that we consider the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, to in fact be, for our purposes, the BDGs, the Business Development Goals, because business is in fact integrated in each of the 17. Right. And we look at that as something which is critical for the business community to be involved in, not just in terms of business economic factors, but also with regards to the planet and the people on the planet. Right. So it's not just an economic function. It's economy combined with planet, combined with people.
That's great. That's great. And Rob, I wonder if you can maybe talk a little bit about how MTN is thinking about the SDGs as an individual company. You know, what opportunities do they provide for the way you operate, the way you do your work, the way you think about your corporate strategy?
So MTN, we operate across 22 countries, Africa and Middle East. We service more than 200 million customers. And whilst we work in very exciting, beautiful markets, they are also markets with many challenges. Digital inclusion, access to the internet, financial inclusion, gender equality. Many of our markets have issues around access to clean water, food. In the Middle East, of course, we operate Syria, Yemen, Afghanistan, a lot of what's called conflict markets. Right. So I think the very important thing for MTN is that we find the right combination of getting the business strategy to also dovetail into the socio-economic requirements of the markets we're in. Right. And we think there's an enormous amount of common ground there. Because what's good for these markets is to have affordable access to broadband, and for companies like MTN to build mobile banking systems. And this, of course, is also, I think, very important foundational building blocks for the SDGs. Right. Basic access to internet and to transactional banking platforms, whilst at the same time making sure that we are responsible in regard to the socioeconomic issues in the markets themselves, refugees, migrants, etc. So, this is what we're about. We've come up with a new strategy called Bright. We try and integrate this into one program, one dream, one vision for our company.
That's really exciting to hear. And you touch on an important point, which is that, at the heart of the SDG agenda is this idea of leaving no one behind, right? And so you mentioned the work that MTN is doing. I wonder if you can maybe speak, both of you, a little bit to, I think a lot of the times when we talk about the SDGs in the business context, it's not necessarily the people at the supply chain level, at the bottom of the base of the pyramid that you think of, but oftentimes they're the people that are the hardest to reach, and they're the ones that SDGs are going to be the most important for. So can you maybe speak a little bit about how you are thinking about these issues, when it comes to human rights, labor standards, supply chain, gender equality, things like that?
I would say the points that have been raised about MTN MTN and the initiatives that you have going are critical to the success of the Sustainable Development Goals. And the Sustainable Development Goals need to succeed at a very basic level. And access to the internet, whether it's through SMEs, whether it's through gender equality, whether it's regards to water supply, all of these SDGs, the connectivity provided by the internet will advance that agenda. And the acceleration that's going on with regards to the success of the SDGs is really quite phenomenal. With the internet, it's a complete revolution that's going on at the basic level. In Africa, if I may say specifically, that's a very important, at a rudimentary level, for all of these efforts to be moving along in tandem, to be marching along in tandem, is something which is really important and really critical. And MTN plays a critical role in that.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, that's great. And I wonder, I know we're short on time a little bit, but I wonder if maybe if there was one thing, Rob, that you could say that is going to be critical to driving further action and that companies need to think about as they do more on advancing this agenda, what would that be? And then curious, John, if you could also maybe speak to how do we continue momentum on this agenda?
Yeah, I think, what's always been important for me is how we think about sustainability.
Yep.
I was often asked, what is our sustainability strategy? And I always answer that actually what we need is a sustainable strategy.
Right.
So I think that what is really important is that we don't, cut our efforts into artificial categories.
Sure.
Here we have, charitable giving. Here we have how we minimize our own impact on the environment. And then over there is the business.
Right.
Okay, I don't think that's the right framing. I think we need an integrated system. We need corporates to take a long-term view. And to have a strategy where everything we build will ensure the long-term viability of the corporation, but also the long-term viability of the markets in which we operate with all of their socioeconomic challenges and opportunities. So I'm a big believer in an integrated system-based approach.
That's perfect. Anything to add, John?
Absolutely. One thing we've touched upon is the SMEs and interconnectivity through the internet. At a higher level, which you mentioned, it's important to realize the momentum that this is getting at the senior corporate level.
Absolutely.
10 days ago, more or less, Larry Fink, the head of BlackRock, issued a statement to his annual letter to his CEOs. The company's, he's the largest investment firm in the world. In his letter to his annual letter to the CEOs, mentioned their responsibility for fulfilling not only bottom line revenue, not only bottom line productivity, but part of the profitability of a corporation is their ability to affect societal change and to be involved in societal change. And he wants action and reports on that. He can get action and reports because he's giving them the money that they need. And it was a tremendous clarion call that Larry Fink put out. It's now time. It's been said before, but he said it very strongly and very robustly. It's now time for corporations to look at their revenue and their profit in terms of societal impact.
Absolutely.
This is where we are. This is where we need to be.
That's great. Yeah, and there's been so much great effort with groups like the Business Sustainable Development Commission, which John, you were a member of.
Yes.
But also, it's great to see companies like MTN and others taking leadership on this agenda. So excited to see how you're going to continue to maintain the momentum, but also how, John, you're going to work with the ICC and in partnership with the UN to drive it forward.
Right.
So thank you so much for joining us. I'm sorry we couldn't continue the conversation longer, but exciting times ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone for joining us for this conversation. You can follow along with the rest of our efforts at #SDG Live or by visiting us at sdglive.org. Thank you very much.